Welcome back everyone to part 4 of making our ambidextrous blanket. In part 1 we talked about the supplies that we needed. In part 2 we made the slip knot and also the beginning chain for the bottom of our blanket. And in part 3 we made the very first row, which was made in single crochet. Now in part 4 we're going to make our next row in what is called Elmore double crochet, and I'll be teaching you how to make that in case you're not familiar with that particular stitch. All right, so to start, we're at the end of our single crochet row and we need to turn our work. So to avoid that twist that we get when we turn our work when we're traditionally just crocheting, we'll turn it with our hook still in the work. To prevent that twist that happens at the base of the stitch, we're just going to actually take out our crochet hook and then turn the work and reinsert our hook. And this way we have a real pretty stitch that doesn't have that twist going on. Now you'll notice when you put your hook back in, the yarn should be moving toward the back of the hook. That is the correct orientation. So let me snug that back up. All right, to start this row, we're going to start with 3 turning chains. So we've got chain 1, chain 2, and chain 3. And in this row, this chain 3 is actually going to count as the very first stitch in our row. So to start our next stitch, we're going to yarn over and we're going to skip the first 3 chains here, chain 1, chain 2, chain 3, and we're going to skip that very first single crochet because that is what the chain 3 is coming out of. And since this is counting as our first stitch, we're going to skip that single crochet. We will go over to the second single crochet and we'll insert our hook under both of those top loops. See the 2 top loops there? And we're going to yarn over from the back to the front and pull up a loop, and we'll have 3 loops on our hook. We're going to make a chain 1 by yarning over and just pulling through 1 loop only. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops on the hook, and yarn over and pull through 2 loops on the hook. And that is how you make an Elmore double crochet. So we've got our very first completed Elmore double crochet, and we've got our chain 3. This is the first stitch, and this is the second stitch. If you look at the top, that's the very first V, and this is the second. This is from the Elmore double crochet, and this is from the chain 3. So we're going to actually work into that 3rd chain when we come back around on the next row. Okay, so we're just going to continue across, yarn over, insert your hook into the next single crochet. Again, make sure you're under both of those top loops. Yarn over and pull up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on the hook. Chain 1 by yarning over and only pulling through 1 of those loops. Yarn over and pull through 2 loops. Yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So again, we'll yarn over, go to the next stitch, insert your hook under both of those 2 top loops, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 1 loop to make your chain 1, yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. All right, and we're just going to continue this all the way across. I'm only working with a small sample here, so I will end up having 10 worked stitches. you will have 119. I always like to count my stitches at the very end of my row to make sure that I didn't skip a stitch or maybe worked a double stitch accidentally. I've actually had that happen before where I've skipped a stitch, and it's never fun to have to rip back your work and start over. So I find it worth it just to take a minute and stop and count my stitches before I proceed to the next row. That way I can always fix my mistake. Okay, we're almost to the end of the row here. And here's our very last stitch to work. So this is the single crochet from below, and you can see the very top of the chain. That little nubby thing right there is the turning chain. You want to make sure that you do not work into that. Okay, so to make our last stitch, yarn over, go under the 2 top loops of that single crochet from below, yarn over and pull up a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook. Chain 1 by yarning over and only pulling through 1 loop. Yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and yarn over and pull through 2 loops. And you are finished with working that row of Elmore double crochet. Now the Elmore double crochet is actually going to be our main stitch in this blanket. And on our following row, we're going to work it with our left hand, and we're going to come back across this way. So, like I said, I always like to count my chains to make sure I have the correct number of stitches. So here's 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And that very first stitch there, again, is the very top of the chain 3. So chain 1, chain 2, chain 3 is the very top stitch. That's going to be important when we come back around to work. Okay, so that completes this row, and I will see you in the next video to continue with your blanket.